Daniel Farke has just finished his press conference ahead of the match against Blackburn Rovers this weekend, so I thought I'd have a little bit of a deep dive into what Daniel Farke said, what it means for the match ahead against Blackburn, how they're going to play, and ultimately my predictions for the match. So let's get right in and start off with the team news. And Sam Byram, Crescencio Somerville, and Joe Gelhardt all had knocks early on in the week. This might sound a little bit scary, but trust me, it isn't. They're basically fine. He said that they'd earlier in the week missed a couple of days of training, but gotten back into it almost entirely fine. They are likely to be able to train today, tomorrow, and potentially play in the match. They are all back for the game. That's not a problem. One potential issue is the fact that Luke Ayling has light knee problems. He might be able to train ahead of the match. If he isn't, it's really unlikely to see him being part of the selection, given the fact that the right back position is already rammed full of talent. You got Byram that can play there, Spence, Gray. He's a fourth choice. So him being even potentially out of the match is a big problem. Maybe he gets into the squad if that Byram injury is worse than expected, but I don't see it happening. He also discussed sharing the load in terms of minutes, and he specifically said this in terms of the front line. So we're talking Nonto coming on late on in games, we're talking Bamford coming on late on in games, and also talked a little bit about how Nonto and Bamford might not be putting in the performances that everyone expects of them at the moment, but that's basically fine because they're not getting enough minutes to get into the form that people expect. That's completely okay. The only other player that is definitely missing is Jan Poveda, who is currently on international duty. Sorry about that. I heard a lot of big noises from outside the door, so I thought I'd pause the recording and make sure it was all okay. Daniel Farke said that he will always allow a player to go and play for his national team. He said that this is a little bit different because it's during the season and there's club matches going on, so obviously South American teams are picking out players that the clubs are okay with leaving, but it's still an international call-up. He's still going to play for Colombia, and he was desperate to go. And Farke has also noted that this is a chance to shine for a different player, a chance to sort of put your voice out there and say, yes, I deserve this place in the squad. So the likes of a Mateo Joseph could force their way in today. There was also a little bit of a discussion of discipline throughout the squad, which I think was a very interesting conversation. We've had no bans for yellow cards so far, and Daniel Farke said that you need a sort of balance between playing aggressively and playing carefully. You need to manage it in a smart and balanced way. So, in terms of, for example, Joe Rodon getting a bunch of yellow cards, if he's on 4, maybe tell him to ease off. Strauch can pick up like the main bulk of the hard tackling stuff, maybe even Archie Gray next to him. Make sure that you're not getting those 5th yellow cards because there are big issues when it comes to suspensions. Ultimately, you avoid the issues that Manchester City have seen and saw in the match against Aston Villa. They were missing Rodri because of a yellow card suspension. They were missing Jack Grealish because of a yellow card suspension. And the fact that they had neither of them meant they lost. And they didn't have Rodri winning possession again or Grealish creating those chances. So being very careful and making sure you don't pick up those yellow cards means that you're ultimately looking after your squad and guaranteeing performances going forwards. It might be more fun for fans to say, let's get stuck into them and let's beat them properly, but that doesn't always add up to the reality. He also discussed Glenn Kamara. He's been very pleased with his performances. He said a few weeks back that we really need to keep an eye on Kamara because he needs to make sure that he's able to build his performances up and ultimately get into some form because he missed a big chunk of pre-season, and I don't think anyone would disagree that he has definitely managed to do that in recent weeks. Kamara has firmly stepped up his level. He's at the very least as good as Ethan Ampadu in recent matches, maybe even better. But once both of them are definitely fit and firing, because Ampadu has been a little bit lower than his level, I would argue, for a couple of weeks, we'll be fine. We won't have any issues in the slightest. He then talked a little bit about Blackburn Rovers, our opponents for the match that's coming up at the weekend, and the opponents that we're previewing, basically. So, first up, there was discussion on their top scorer, Schmodix. Another pause. The door went again. Schmodix has been very, very good in both possession, in terms of creating chances and putting them away himself. He scored something like, I think, 11 goals off the top of my head. I did have the number up somewhere. I'm going to grab the number now, just because I want to make sure it's right, because I always do. But in terms of Blackburn all the way across the rest of the pitch, they are very, very good at sort of challenging teams when they have possession. They're very fluent. They're very good at moving players from the number 10 to the right wing, to the left wing, to centre forward, and making sure that they're really hard to track an individual player. You can't tell a centre back track the striker because suddenly the striker's out on the right wing, centre back's out of position, and we have been blown wide open. Sorry, I'm having a very slight issue with whoscored.com being a knob. Yeah, they're very tough to mark against. We need to have a good structure, and we really need to make sure that any video sessions that we're doing in terms of like watching what's happening really, really get on top of how we deal with it. Just double checked. Schmodix has 14 goals. For context, Pirro and Somerville combined have 16. He's definitely the player that we need to deal with here. He scored 44% of Blackburn's goals. If we can shut him down, we'll be doing okay. They do, however, have some fairly big injury concerns at the moment. Blackburn are missing 6 first-team players due to injury. Yeah, that could be a problem for them. If they're able to pick their good players, we could find ourselves in a bit more trouble. If they're not, we've got something to expose. They are very creative as a side and very good at holding leads, but they do have their weaknesses outside of the 6 injured players. First up, they're apparently very poor at handling highly skilled players. Here I've noted Crescencio Somerville and Jorginho Rutter as players that, when they're going at a defender, they're happy to take them on. They're happy to go 1v1, dribble past them, and sort of force an error in comparison to the likes of Dan James, who is going to kick the ball past you and sprint after it. The idea is, if we can target potentially poor centre-backs here, we'll be in with an absolute treat of a match, because it's going to work out. They are also fairly poor at dealing with transitional football. I've noted Jorginho Rutter here, but also Dan James. Dan James's pace is absolutely blinding, and Rutter's through balls finding Dan James is going to be absolutely key to us winning this match. I can see us scoring at least once from a counter-attack or transitional moment, whether that's out of pressing or their attack, but we'll work something out. We will almost certainly get a goal that way. There'll be a lot of opportunities for us, I think, by the end of this game. Something that concerns me a little bit, I have to admit, is the fact that we've been very good at conceding goals at the very start of the first half and the very end of the first half. I don't know why it's been such a fundamental problem for us so far this season, but it's something that we're going to have to deal with, or we're in quite serious shit. I think we'll be okay, is the best way that I can put that. I think if we've got it drilled into our heads that we need to stay tight and compact against that highly rotational front line, then we will. We'll be okay. And they do have, and I'm going to bring it back, those big injury concerns. And that means that they're going to be missing defenders, which means we're going to be against a not first choice 11 from a team that does not have the quality to deal with us in the first place. We will create a hell of a lot of opportunities to score goals here. In terms of predictions, it's quite hard to say. I think that we'll score a good few goals. I can see us getting 3. Whether or not we defend solidly enough is a completely different question. I think we will have learned the lessons from Borough and Swansea and stay tight at the beginning of the match. Maybe we concede at some point in the first half, but that second half bollocking that Daniel Farke tends to give seems to be working. So we can hope. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Sorry I've not been uploading consistently recently. It's because various personal life, family things that I've been trying to keep on top of, including work. I've had lots and lots of individual projects recently, but it's fine. Comment down below what you think, like the video and subscribe, even become a channel member. And if you're seeing this, maybe stick around tonight. Tonight I will be streaming the playoffs for my Championship Saving Football Manager. I think it's Leicester first and then one of Hull or Ipswich if we get to the final. That's going to be a very important stream, I think. So hope to see you there. And yeah, I will see you later.